We all need community. Connection. One of the most unique elements of CC Live is that it is more than just a once-a-week worship experience. We are creating a global community of believers who meet together worldwide to be inspired, equipped, and encouraged with their faith. And the best part about it is you can do it anytime, anywhere. The purpose of online groups is building community while growing your Christian faith. Online groups watch video-based Bible teaching and discuss what they're learning from the comfort of their own homes. During the week between meetings, group members can dive deeper into the topic in preparation for the next meeting. It's simple, easy, and impactful. So grab a coffee, a Bible, and your device of choice, and let's get ready to learn more about God and His Word together. Looking for a group? Head to the CC Live Facebook page now to find the one that's right for you.
Are you on Spotify? If so, be sure to check out our worship playlists by searching for the playlist name, Worship at Christ's Church.
Giving online couldn't be any easier. To give, go to ourchristchurch.com. Click on the Give link. On the Giving page, click on Give from Bank Account. Next, click on the link to PushPay. On this page, you can set up your one-time gift or set up a recurring gift. You can also make a gift by simply texting CC Mason to 77977. Click on the link you receive. Next, fill out your information and submit your gift.
We all need community. Connection. One of the most unique elements of CC Live is that it is more than just a once-a-week worship experience. We are creating a global community of believers who meet together worldwide to be inspired, equipped, and encouraged with their faith. And the best part about it is you can do it anytime, anywhere. The purpose of online groups is building community while growing your Christian faith. Online groups watch video-based Bible teaching and discuss what they're learning from the comfort of their own homes. During the week between meetings, group members can dive deeper into the topic in preparation for the next meeting. It's simple, easy, and impactful. So grab a coffee, a Bible, and your device of choice, and let's get ready to learn more about God and His Word together. Looking for a group? Head to the CC Live Facebook page now to find the one that's right for you.
Are you on Spotify? If so, be sure to check out our worship playlists by searching for the playlist name, Worship at Christ's Church.
been a lie. Alone in my sorrow and dead in my sin, lost without hope of no place to begin. Your love made a way to let mercy come in. When death was arrested and my life began, ash was redeemed, only beauty remains, and my orphan heart was given a name. My mourning grew quiet, my feet rose to dance. When death was arrested and my life began. Oh, your grace, so free, washes over me. You have made me new, now life begins with you. It's your endless love pouring down on us. You have made us new, now life begins with you. Released from my chains, I'm a prisoner no more. My shame was a ransom he faithfully bore. He canceled my debt and he called me his friend. When death was arrested and my life began. Oh, your grace, so free, washes over me. You have made me new, now life begins with you. It's your endless love pouring down on us. You have made us new, now life begins with you. Our Savior displayed on a criminal's cross. Darkness rejoiced as though heaven had lost. But then Jesus arose with our freedom in hand. That's when death was arrested and my life began. Oh, your grace, so free, washes over me. You have made me new, now life begins with you. It's your endless love pouring down on us. You have made us new, now life begins with you. Oh, we're free, free, forever we're free. And come join the song for all the redeemed. Yes, we're free, free, forever, amen. When death was arrested and my life began. Oh, we're free, free, forever we're free. And come join the song for all the redeemed. Yes, we're free, free, forever, amen. When death was arrested and my life began. When death was arrested and my life began. When death was arrested and my life began.
Hey, good evening and welcome to our Let's Talk. Let's Talk is a brand new podcast we're launching designed to keep you up to date and connected during this crazy time of this coronavirus. In a time where social distancing can lead many to feel isolated and alone, we want to create a space where we can gather together, sit back, connect, and help each other out. And maybe laugh a little bit. That's why we're here. To
We
laugh a little
probably
bit.
will laugh a little bit, actually.
Let me introduce myself. I'm Joey Santos. I'm be our hosting for the evening. I'm the Global Integration Pastor here at Christ Church Mason. It's a big title, so nobody.
Global Integration. That sounds so
Global
official.
Integration is so. It's really like I like it. That was Alan Baumline's idea. I remember when he called me to like
You're welcome.
offer me the job. Is like, here's your title. I was like, I want to say yes just for the title, so I can call myself.
You're the
that.
GIP.
Yes. But we got people here that you all know. We got people here that you all know. I hope you do. Here it is, our lead pastor, Trevor DeVage, the lead pastor here at Christ Church. He's what we call him the chief shepherd.
We do
Christ
not
Church
call
of
me the
Law.
chief. I've never been called that in my life. The chief shepherd.
Exactly.
I'm about to
Like
get the
that?
staff out and pull you right
Did
off
you-
the screen
oh,
right
come
now.
on now.
Yeah,
Come on. I like that. The chief shepherd.
I've
yes.
never heard that. Have you heard that in your life? I've never been called that ever before.
I heard it 50 minutes ago.
Yeah, I've never heard that before, so that's hilarious.
And also we have here with us Alan Baumline. Alan, just tell us a little bit about what you do here at Christ Church.
I'm the executive pastor, so I'm responsible for the staff, responsible for keeping us out of trouble most of the time.
Wow, how's that
Look at
going?
me, man.
Well, he's not doing very good at
How's
his
that
job. I
going?
can tell you that right now. That's hilarious.
Right now, I think his primary job is keeping the virus outside this building.
We're trying very hard to do that
Exactly.
right now.
So far, so good.
And right here with us also we have my leader, Mr. Willis.
Mr. Willis.
Mr. Willis.
No.
Brad Wilson. Brad Wilson carry a lot of titles in this church.
He
but
does.
The favorite one is the missions pastor.
That is his favorite one.
I mean, it's probably my favorite title.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
About myself,
Yes.
there's really not much. Everyone pretty much knows everything.
Well, he likes walks on the beach. He likes
Yeah.
holding hands, skipping, frolicking, if you will.
I like-
That
I like podcasts.
describes Brad Wilson.
It does to a T if you know him.
Lava lamps.
I actually wore this shirt for you tonight.
I know, I appreciate.
oh.
I appreciate
Oh,
that.
the Ohio
shirt.
State
It's about
shirt,
to
just for
become
the Michigan
personal
fan.
pretty
That's
fast.
good. That's great. So
But man, let's talk a little bit about today. Governor DeWine gave us a little update on the order.
Yep.
What's going on. And one of the things that we want to talk about today is the role of the faith-based organizations. Not only just our church, but in general, like what is the role of a faith-based organization at this time? And I want to start with you, Trevor, as the lead guy. You being invited to speak in different events, online events about it.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you see like the role of a faith-based organization this time?
Yeah, well, I think right now the kicker for me is that this is mobilizing the church, mobilizing local church. This is no longer about the church down the street, what they're doing versus what we're doing. This is what we're doing as the church collectively. I go back to the food drive that we've been doing weekly for our local schools with Joshua's Place here, and we had like the local Hindu temple down the street and the Muslim temple over in Westchester. They actually brought food for that to us, and we're like, we're just here to help. We want to do whatever we can to help. And so when you start pulling out the faith-based organizations, you go even broader, just not even just the Christian church, but faith-based in general, it's starting to unite those things for even greater conversations beyond this virus right now. So I think it's really broad. I think that we're going to have to get past ourselves in order to do greater work together with people that may not be like us.
Yeah, and I mean, for Alan, looking from the operation perspective, I know many churches right now are probably looking at, okay, we went from this thing ending right now to possibly ending right now to going all the way now to May 1st officially. So what that looks like operationally for churches?
It looks a lot different for churches. Fortunately for us, I mean, we've been kind of on the online digital platform for quite a while now, but there are a lot of churches out there that even in Ohio and well beyond that we're hearing across the country, they're still meeting, some not so creatively and some creatively in parking lots and things like that. But from an operations perspective, it really does turn everything upside down for us.
It
and try to figure
doesn't
that out.
bring financial challenges?
Absolutely. There are still, I mean, with our building, just like other buildings, other communities of faith, there's utility bills to pay. There's staff and salary that families that are affected by this, and just like out in corporate America. So a lot of challenges. And when we're solely funded by our congregation or faithful givers, it's important to realize that, or just be transparent about that, I guess.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a key that he just said, is just the transparency with it. And we've both been on Zoom calls and webinars and conferences with guys around the country. And actually right now we're kind of fortunate in this moment that our people have been pretty amazing here over the last couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
Our giving has been so good. Like I'm just blown away by how generous our people have been through this. But I've got friends around the country that they're laying off anywhere from 20 to 100 staff in some of these churches, and they're going from 6-7 campuses with 30 plus services a weekend down to no campuses a weekend and one service online. And what Alan just said, I think we've been poised, Global Integrations Pastor, we've been poised online for the last 2.5, almost 3 years, ready for this moment. And so I'm not sure for us it's been as detrimental as some of these other churches, because they've just not been ready for this. And I'm not saying that hard times may not come our way, but I'm just saying I'm so thankful for right now. Operationally, our people have really stepped up. And I would tell the church in general, not just our church in general, there's a biblical obligation to continue to be generous, even when the world may be falling apart. We're called to be generous. So
it's kind of interesting. I remember coming in here 2.5 years ago, and I know that out of this table here, one guy had a really hard time with trying to understand what my job was, and that was Brad. Like I
thought you were going to say you. I was really hoping that was not the case.
Was Global Integrations?
Exactly. But as the online piece, like we had these conversations, like what, I'm going to just put this question for all of you is, where do you see the church going after this? Because do you think the church is going to be just exactly like has been for the longest time, or do you think there's changes coming after this season that we're going through?
What do you think, Brad?
I think there'll be some differences with it, but I think what's interesting with all of this is the online stuff to me is great, and I think that's going to be a part. More places are going to do that. But I think the thing that we're finding out, I mean, one of the reasons that they keep issuing all these orders is people like to get together, people like to congregate. And so when that's taken away, you want to figure out ways to get together with people. So I think that things will look a little different, but there'll be some things that once we're allowed to get back in the building, I think that churches all across the country, they'll be really celebratory, because there's a lot of people, you realize that once you don't see them, or once you get out of the normal kind of functions and patterns of life, you realize, man, I miss these people and I miss what we had.
So the mission of the church, it will not change. The way we engage with that mission, do you think is going to change?
I think it has to. I don't think the church can go back to what it was before.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't.
So tell us, break that down a little bit.
Yeah, well, I had this conversation on that webinar a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I was on about digital church, and I think the church for a long time we've gotten real complacent and we take for granted. Like, we're sitting in our auditorium right now, right? And these seats are empty, and they've been empty for a month now.
Yeah.
But what has not been empty is online. Our online audience has exploded, and what we've found is that we can engage here even more effectively. We can engage with more people in a shorter amount of time. And I think those that have never experienced church in this way are starting to experience it that way. But I think it's an awakening of the church right now, not just in the digital, but I think the awakening of the things that we get so frustrated about in the church. I mean, I've seen people leave churches over really dumb stuff, like music and colors on walls.
Well, the good news right now, nobody's complaining about sound being too loud.
Oh, no, you can just turn your TV
chairs.
down.
Right.
If it's too loud, just mute it. I mean, if you don't like how long I preach,
Exactly,
just turn
right.
it off. I mean, but I think that moving forward, I think the reminder continually is going to be those things don't matter. What matters is that we're actually able to, one, gather, but then scatter. Like the church now has been scattered, like in the book of Acts, when it was like Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, ends of the earth. The church now has been scattered. God scattered the church then, and he's scattering the church now. And I think our impact will become greater because now people are having to take responsibility for their own faith online with their friends on Zoom calls and FaceTimes and everywhere else. They're actually taking responsibility for it. So I don't think the church can go back to where it was. I think this is the awakening of the church in the next century.
Well, for everybody watching, it's great to see great crowd watching on CC Life page and Facebook.
Yeah.
We're very excited. And I'm going to tell you, you can ask questions. So make sure to go to the chat room either on Facebook Live or CC Life page and ask your questions. Let us know. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can. Guys, let's take this a little more on a personal level. I won't lie to you. When this thing when the first information about the virus came out, it was kind of scary. But it just got worse to me. It's just like in my mind, like, okay, this is, and they kept talking about 15 days, but this is the longest 15 days I've been in, right? Because we went from 15 days to a month and it keeps stretching. And we know that nobody knows. But tell me about personally, how did you handle whatever you're feeling? Like tell us a little bit about the first feeling and how it is right now.
Well, I think for me, when it first came out, it wasn't scary. I was like, what's the big deal about it? You know, it's the flu. And over the past probably 3 or 4 days, it's really kind of sunk into me that, no, it's not just the flu. It is something different. It's got some parallels to the flu virus, but it certainly is something different and something new that they've been talking about from the government perspective all the way down. So I don't have any fear or anxiety over getting the COVID-19. I feel like we, the staff of the church people in general, are called to a higher purpose and a higher mission, regardless of the surroundings around us. So if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, that's the most important thing to me. And that's what I've been telling my kids and my wife. And we've been afforded a lot of opportunities that we can spend additional time together. So that's been a benefit.
Good.
For sure through it.
See, I was irritated at first because I'm
shocked by that.
my kids, I mean, we were coming back. I mean, I already planned. They were going to skip school on Friday. We're going over to the Big Ten tournament in Indy, and then they cancel that. And then the death knell of sports came. And they're like, okay, there's going to be no March Madness. They cancel NBA. So.
Well, I think for you and I, the biggest damage of all this is to close Buffalo Wild Wings. That was
for the two of you, that's a big deal.
I mean,
exactly.
Because I think you single-handedly keep them in business.
I mean, there's
Well, local B-dubs there's like cheers for you guys.
I mean,
They
when
know
they
your
closed
names.
B-dubs, I started listening to Careless Whisper a lot because I was like, I'm never going to eat wings again.
You said Careless
Right?
Whisper.
I mean,
I mean,
truth be told, when you go to a restaurant any given day, and the waitress doesn't have to ask you what you want, she just
you're there
automatically-
too much.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what I
but
experienced lately.
that's ministry.
I like that he just, in the name of ministry,
Exactly.
B-dubs.
It's
Exactly.
like a third grade palate is what that is.
That's exactly. Yeah, Brad Wilson has the palate of basically a 6-year-old, and he doesn't stretch out of his wings.
So what about you? I mean, I think for you, bring it to us into reality, the weight of you have the calling to lead an entire church.
Yeah.
Personally, how did that hit you?
As the chief shepherd.
The chief shepherd.
Yeah. I've never been called that until tonight. You know what's interesting? I think Brad and I were talking about this the other day. I'm kind of with Alan. When I first heard about this, I was like, okay. I mean, I've been through SARS. I've been through, swine flu, bird flu, like all these things over the last however many years. And I really just didn't give it much credence. And then it started gaining teeth and gaining traction. And then we started like, we're not going to have church on Sunday. And as a lead pastor, you start like, I had these panic moments of, we've got staff to take care of. We've got people in our church to take care of. We've got a community to take care of. We've got initiatives that we're doing globally and locally. And so my mind right away starts going, what if we have to shut this whole thing down, like literally shut it down for good? And, but I'll be honest with you, like I've not been anxious about how we're leading through this, if that makes sense. And I think we were talking about this the other day after we got done shooting some videos. And I actually feel like, for whatever reason, I feel like God's prepared me to lead through this crisis, like through crisis, better than leading through when things are good. Because like I'm more focused right now. I'm locked in right now. I feel like where I'm going preaching wise, where I'm going leading wise, for me personally, actually, I love the pressure of this moment because I feel like this is what I was put here to lead through. And that may sound really, I don't know what it sounds like, but I don't know how to explain that other than I've got a calm and a peace. But I really feel like God may have called me here for this moment in history to lead us through this moment to the other side of this, and then watch what God's going to do on the other side of this. Because like I'm doing these Facebook Live prayer things we're doing at 11:30 during the week. I enjoy it. Like I'm preparing for it just like I would for a sermon. Our messages, like we've been online doing video for forever.
Yeah.
And I actually, video doesn't bother me. I love video. I've been doing video for 20 years of ministry. And so I feel like God's prepared my gift set for this moment in history for the church, locally and globally. And so I've actually got a calm right now about leading our church through this. And we're helping other churches right now. I mean, Joey and I are getting emails, sometimes a dozen a week, from other churches going, can you guys help us? We had one today, actually, from a friend out west, and churches are just going, hey, help us figure out how to do this better. And I feel like we're prepared for that. So we're not only able to help our church move through this, but we're able to help other churches move through this as well. And I think on the other side of this, we get to be a beacon of light for our community, for the kingdom, and for the church.
So, Alan, tell us a little bit about, technically speaking, as a church, what are the challenges that we face, and not just us as a Christ Church? I wanted to put in a global perspective of the church in general. What are the challenges that you see the church facing immediately? What are the challenges that you see operationally the church facing after this, and what the church should prepare for? What the church should prepare for coming back?
Well, I mean, first of all, we got to keep it in perspective, right? I mean, even though the governor just put out to the end of the month, kind of May 1st lockdown, whatever term you want to use, there's a bunch of different terms out there. But eventually, things are going to come back to some new normal. We were talking about what the church looks like coming back out of this, and whether it goes back to the old normal or the new normal. It's going to be different. I don't know where it's going to fall. I don't think the church has always been about people. So it's the people that aren't in this room right now that really matter. It's how do we get them, keep them engaged with neighbors, with their people, their circles in work, so that they can begin or continue to build relationships, because that's what it's all based on. I mean, it's one-on-one people.
So let me turn this to, let's bring this home right now. So, Brad, what pie means to us at this moment?
Well, specify pie, because some of our audience may not know what that means.
So pray, invite, engage. That's a good point.
Right. That's our strategy. Pray, invite, engage. So there's strategy,
pray, invite, and engage. Well, we've been talking about this with everybody in the room. But what this looks like right now, when actually we have to practice social distancing. So what that looks like for us?
Well, I think to me, we talk about our people about praying for their one, but to me, in some of the ways, I think what's interesting about this is if you get to the invite or the engage piece, what's happened during this time, and this is where I think there's a big difference, kind of what Alan was saying, what the new normal is people are able to engage with the church and are engaging in the church when they haven't for maybe years or maybe for the majority of their lifetime. And so with this online perspective, it's given them the ability to engage with what's going on around here without coming into a building. So if you have friends, if you got neighbors, family, the whole strategy of you're praying for someone, you're inviting them, you want them to get engaged, you're still able to do that. And that's something I think is what this is in some strange ways has done, this COVID-19, is it's allowed us to open the doors, and churches are getting people checking them out that in the past maybe never would have. And so for us, with some of our online stuff, it's allowing us to reach people. And we're hearing from our people that are like, yeah, my family member or my neighbor is checking out what we're doing. And so it's kind of tweaked that strategy a little bit, which is allowing us to have more engagement, and it's almost creating an easier invite for our people.
Well, Joey I can't remember if it was Joey or Alan. I don't want to say the name in case it breaches anything, but we had one of our very engaged members this last week talk about her one showed up online this last week. And she was like, I've been praying for my one that there'd be an opportunity for them to engage in church. And I can't remember if she was telling you or you from the Monkey Bar that one of their ones showed up online. And I think, man, there's, again, going back to, we've been doing online ministry for a while now. We've got house campuses across the globe, and we've got our Monkey Bar location here and living rooms here. And yet through this crisis, we've had people, their ones are showing up. As of tomorrow, we will have had 4 baptisms in the last 2 weeks because of what's happening in our online ministry. So God is still moving in the midst of all this. And I would agree with Brad. I think this is an easier invite, and people are actually they're actually inviting. And they're not just sharing it. They're actually telling people, hey, this is my church. This is what's going on. And through crisis, people are more open to hear about Jesus.
Well, I'm going to ask a question. We got a question from Gary Herbert, and they're talking about community groups, which is a great thing that's happening and we have available now.
Yeah.
We got community groups available tomorrow. We're going to make available online 12 community groups that can start.
Brand new groups.
Brand new groups, 12. But he asked a great question, and he asked, what is the biggest miss for most Christians around prayer? And what could we as a church pray for our staff?
Well, I'm knee deep in this kind of an awakening of prayer a little bit right now. I think the greatest miss in prayer for us is we don't pray big enough prayers. I don't think we pray specific enough, risky enough, big enough prayers. I think we pray safe prayers all the time. Like, God, thank you for this meal, and it's Buffalo Wild Wings. Bless it to my body. He's not gonna bless that to your body.
I don't know, dude.
I don't know. See, I respectfully disagree.
I even think too, like, my mom's always like, I'm praying for traveling mercies. Mom, stop praying that. That's fine. You want to pray for my safety? That's great. But that becomes kind of the what our prayer life looks like. It's really always safe. It's always about safety, and it's always about bless something to me. What if we begin to pray real specific, dangerous prayers for the gospel? And I really believe that through this, I think the church has got to awaken to deeper, more intentional prayer. Like, when you're praying for one person, it's not just, God, I pray for Joey, and that you would do something. It's, you know what, God, give me an opportunity to reach Joey, to talk into his life, to speak into him, and to help him see you. And then for our staff, I think for our staff right now, and probably for staffs around the country, there's got to be some sort of anxiety and fear for the staffs of churches right now going, what happens if this thing goes for 3 months? 5 months, 6 months. And I'd love to say it's not going to. I don't have that answer. So I think how you can pray for our staff specifically is stamina. Our staff's working really, really hard right now around the clock, especially when it comes to content. Like, we're just developing content like this all the time right now. And it's really shifted how our staff does what they do. I would also say pray for that fear and anxiety to dissipate. And the best way for that to happen is for the church to continue to be generous towards their churches, whether not just ours, churches in general. So that would be I don't know if you guys have anything else.
Brad and I have talked a lot about prayer. I like some of the stuff that you say, so I'm going to yield my time to you, man.
I mean, are we going to commercial break right now?
Brother Willis has the table.
What with prayer?
Just talking about how we pray and what we pray for. And I don't know that I agree with everything that you say, but
I don't agree with 99% of what he says, but that 1%'s gold.
That's the thing. That's really, with the 4 of us, or even a broader circle, I appreciate the fact that we don't always agree, and that we can banter back and forth on stuff, and we all walk away thinking, well, maybe.
Well, and we challenge each other to think better, which I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the stuff with prayer is I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I also think with people is we overcomplicate it.
Absolutely.
And when people pray, they use words they don't normally use. And to me, one
don't
of
know what they
the
are.
things that prayer is you're having a conversation with God. And it's almost like sometimes people use prayer to hide behind it, or they use it to keep them from doing something, in my opinion. So they're like, well, I'm praying for God to open a door. You know what? Open your eyes. There's already an open door. What God's waiting for you is to go walk and do it. Like if you look at Jesus, I think a lot of stuff when he would go and pray is he knew what he had to do, but it was that time to connect with God. And I think maybe what you're getting at is one of the, and this is just one of my philosophies, I think it's biblical. I had this conversation with my dad.
I think it's biblical.
Is when it comes to
That's
prayer and it comes to praying for people is I just really believe that we have free will. We have the ability to make decisions. So when we pray for people and God's not going to climb into someone's head and change their mind. He's just not going to do it. He's not going to make them do what you want them to do. And I talk with people all the time, especially in relationships or marriages, that people are like, well, I'm praying for this person that God's going to change them and do this. And I just don't see that God's going to cause someone to do what we want them to do.
So what's the point of prayer then? What's the point? If I'm going to pray for somebody with what I feel, like what I think, so what's the point?
One of the big points of prayer is to get courage to do what you oftentimes know what you need to do, because it's pretty clear in Scripture oftentimes what we're supposed to do, but we don't oftentimes do what we're supposed to do. Just like Jesus.
So
what
should we
he was
pray for
referring to.
guidance?
Oh, sure. Wisdom.
Clarity and
Clarity,
guidance.
guidance,
Well, I think
because if we know what to do, why are we going to pray then?
Well, I don't think we always know what to do.
But I think some of his stuff with of being praying courageously and boldly is to go out there and do something, because I think one of the biggest misnomers we have is God's working whether we see it or not. And too often in the church, I think one of the things that's hurt us is we have these prayers and we're praying, God, bless what we're going to do. And for older ministers that have been mentors to me, way smarter than I am, have said, if you want to be successful, is see where God's already working and what he's doing, and then just jump on board with him. It's a higher success rate instead of me saying, you know what, Uncle Jimmy's got a couple of ideas, and I'm just
By
going
the
to
way,
pray that
Brad
God's going
refers
to
to
bless
himself
us.
as Uncle
what do you-
Jimmy on a
okay,
regular.
that's fine, but I think it's the Bible that we find the scriptures that says, bring your petitions
Absolutely.
to me. So I want them to be very clear with the
But-
people
but
watching
Joey,
right now. Is that like,
It's not an either
What-
or. It's a both and. I know what you're saying. I agree with you. Like, it's not an either or. It's a both and. Like, you've got to. I think there's some things, like, stop praying about things you know you're already supposed to go do. I'm praying God gives me an opportunity with my neighbor. Well, he puts you next door to them. Walk next door and ring the doorbell, right? But there's other things that I think, when's the last time you actually prayed that God would heal somebody's sickness and you believe that God would actually do it? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like,
so do you think that we focus too much on the petition instead of the relationship with God?
Yeah,
when it
because
comes to prayer.
there's a book I'm reading right now that I would highly encourage everybody that's watching this to go get. It's called With by Skye Jethani. And he talks about in that book that there's these postures in the church that we've taught, and that we're living for God, we're living under God, we're living over God, but we're not actually living with God. If you go all the way back to the book of Genesis, the Garden of Eden, we were meant to be in step with God. And the one that sounds the most holy out of those four postures that are not with, but is I'm working for God. The problem is the calling becomes more important than our relationship with. And we always got to go do something for God instead of being in step with God. And so I think where a lot of this gets messed up and mixed up is we think doing something for God means we're with God, and that's not always the case. I know a lot of people have done stuff for God that have not necessarily been with God. And I think that when you're walking in step with God, here's the other thing about prayer we don't talk about. We don't listen well to God. We do a lot of talking, a lot of asking. We don't sit still long enough to hear God speak. He speaks through his word. He speaks through those impressions he puts on your heart. He speaks through other people. And before we go and say, God gave me an answer to my prayer, I think you need to check that against, one, does that line up with God's word? And two, is that being confirmed by other people? And three, are you asking other people to actually join that journey with you to be a part of that? Because the body of Christ is supposed to do that, but we don't listen to hear God's voice because we're not with God. We're just trying to do something for God.
That's great. We actually, this is a great discussion. So we're going to take a 3 minutes commercial break. We're going to come back.
We have
and
commercials?
We have commercial break. Look
This
at
is like a real show.
Now, this is like
Brought to you by Mountain Dew Zero Sugar.
No, we actually have a little break, and I want to invite you, everybody, to stay tuned and send your questions. I think let's talk about prayer. Send your questions here through the chat room, Facebook Live, CC Live page. Just make sure to ask your questions. We are more than glad to talk about it. We're going to discuss. When we come back, we're going to talk about family.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about family dynamics.
Our families or
everybody's families.
Sounds
so
wonderful.
we're gonna get personal here.
Wow, because we haven't done that yet.
Exactly. No, not yet. We just started. See, it took 30 minutes to get to a point where we're having.
Right, now we're going to take a break and come back and
Exactly.
finish
Now we're
this
going to
up.
take a break.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a break. We'll be right back here in 3 minutes.
We all need community. Connection. One of the most unique elements of CC Live is that it is more than just a once-a-week worship experience. We are creating a global community of believers who meet together worldwide to be inspired, equipped, and encouraged with their faith. And the best part about it is you can do it anytime, anywhere. The purpose of online groups is building community while growing your Christian faith. Online groups watch video-based Bible teaching and discuss what they're learning from the comfort of their own homes. During the week between meetings, group members can dive deeper into the topic in preparation for the next meeting. It's simple, easy, and impactful. So grab a coffee, a Bible, and your device of choice, and let's get ready to learn more about God and His Word together. Looking for a group? Head to the CC Live Facebook page now to find the one that's right for you.
Holy God, you cannot be contained. Your power is not withheld through buildings, walls, or even quarantine. Our security is in you and not in our circumstances.
Each breath is a gift from you. We see and feel that you are working. We see that lives and families are being changed for your kingdom,
even now. We have faith in this uncertainty and in a moment like this when everything is stripped away.
We remember what is truly important in our lives. Strengthen us, O God. May your power be made perfect in our weakness. Bless us, O God. May your kingdom come in ways that we never dreamed possible.
May we rise up and be united as your hands and feet. One thing is certain, your kingdom cannot be stopped. In our marriages,
In our homes, in our community, in our world. King Jesus, we declare that you still reign and we
are committed to you. Heal our land and give us favor, O God.
as you build us up,
O God. And
send us out.
may your glory be
Evident in all the earth.
It's in your name we pray. Take all our fear and anxiety away today. Give us a peace that surpasses all understanding, like you talk about in your scripture. It's in that peace, in your name we pray. Amen.
Welcome back to our podcast, Let's Talk. I know you're probably wondering why you're doing a podcast live on video. Actually, we're actually launching this podcast And probably after Easter, we're going to actually have a weekly podcast that we're going to launch from our church. And that's what we want to do. We want to talk. We want to have these conversations. It's great. So before we jump into, I said we're going to come back and talk about family, but actually I got a question here from Jennifer. What's the best way to keep engaging my one while social distancing? I prayed, I invited, she had just started coming, then COVID hit. Besides texts, calling to check on her, and inviting her to Sunday to watch parties, I feel like I will lose her.
So personally, I think you've got a greater opportunity right now than even just having her in the building, which is great. I'm so glad she's coming. But I think now you've got the opportunity with like community groups. Get her on a Zoom call with other people. Going back to something Brad said in the break while we were sitting here talking, is what we've said all along with online is get you online to take you offline. That we want to engage you, like we don't want to just broadcast. In fact, the email conversation I had with that church that we were talking with today via email, they were asking about metrics and how we measure things. And I said, honestly, we're not trying to, we don't look at numbers, we look at engagement. Any church can broadcast their services. Most churches do, but we want engagement. And so honestly, to answer Jennifer's question, I think you've got a greater opportunity for engagement with your friend right now, with your one, because you could do Zoom call, you could do Bible studies together, you can get in a community group together. There's women's Bible study on Zoom right now as well. And here's what it really lets down all the defenses, because when you walk in this building, you're forced to interact with people face to face. Online, there's a barrier that's actually not a barrier. It lets down barriers so you can actually be more yourself. And I think she's got a greater opportunity right now. So I would encourage Jennifer to engage her friend in some new ways that maybe she hasn't thought of.
That's great. Anybody else?
I think when we talk about engagement, it's not only about the invitation to the church, because we really encouraged our congregation that would be the last invitation. We're inviting them into our lives. So Trevor mentioned Zoom. We're kind of limited right now because of some of the stuff, but Zoom calls, I wish, side note, I wish I owned Zoom stock, but
I wish you did too, because then you could tithe off of it.
But it's a great way. We're trying to build relationships. So any way that we could build relationships with our friends or those people in our lives that we care so much about is really important right now.
Yeah.
I'm good, thank you.
You're good?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about family. I mean, things have changed a little bit. We got more time together.
Most definitely.
So,
as Uncle Jimmy says.
Tell me a little tell me a little bit here. How things are going at home.
I want to hear from Uncle Jimmy over there about this.
Besides Call of Duty.
By the way, if you're on Call of Duty, Brad will play with you at any time of the night or day. So
I just bought it. I guilty. Like,
well, that and
just got me
Madden
into
20. Madden 20. I'm a little better than Call of Duty. You know, my grandfather used to say, "We're going to find out where the bear went through the buckwheat." And that's basically what we're finding out right now at our houses. So
hey, wait a minute. We need to start a hashtag Bradisms
so
right now.
When you look at all this stuff, for me, it's I've got my boys are home because there's no school, which I don't know about other people's kids. Mine love it. There's no sports to watch, so the dynamic is a little different where we may go out to VOA, but we're just kind of hanging out. And I don't know.
By the way, VOA is Voice of America Park.
Voice of America, yep.
Right.
So we go out there and live the dream, but I kind of just like hanging out at home with the boys.
Yeah.
And I believe in education, so anything I can do to further their academic careers, that's what I'm about.
Are you like did you turn your house into a homeschool?
You know, my house has been a homeschool for years.
Yeah, it's been a homeschool. They've been learning a lot.
That's just what I think of when I think of Brad.
Yeah. I can tell you, when I think education, the first thing that comes to my mind is not Brad Wilson's living room. I'm just telling you. That's just not the first thing that pops up.
Okay, you have 30 seconds. You have 30 seconds to reply here.
I was going to be a preacher or a teacher, so I'm an educator at heart. Look at my
there you
colors.
There you go, man.
There you go.
In your defense, you're going to be a gym teacher, so I mean, there's that.
History.
Yeah.
Well, I'm the old man in the group here, so Nick was my son is in college. I've got a junior in high school, and she loves the fact that we're most likely not going back the rest of this year. So we'll figure out what online learning looks like for her next week. Right?
Yeah,
You guys,
Monday.
you
Starts
guys are on
Monday.
spring break, aren't you?
right now.
We are.
At Mason, we're back in school.
How's it going?
Commitment to excellence.
But Nick's been doing online classes through the University of Miami throughout his education. So this hasn't been a big shift for him either. But at home, we're at a different stage. There, Tina and I are the dumbest people in the world right now, usually.
Well, I wouldn't say Tina there.
Okay,
Tina's really smart. Tina is really smart.
if I had a
We
way to
made our
step
kid-
back here at the table, I would.
All right. I want
We
to get
made our
under the
kids
table
go get
right
jobs. So
I'm just watching Tina coming through the airwaves right now.
Oh, there's some fuzz, Tina. We don't know what happened. We like being home together, though. I mean, we've always been those, like, when the summer hits, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm ready for my kids to go back to school. I need my space. We're like, man, we want our kids home. We love having our kids around. And, we're kind of in that space. Laura and I talk about this a lot, where it's like we're at that phase of life where you guys kind of just went through and are going through again, where it's like, man, we've only got so many years left with our kids in our home. And I feel like, as much as I don't like this virus and I don't like what's happening, what I do love is that it's giving us bonus time that we wouldn't get with our kids. And so we're back in school next week, and who knows how that will turn out. Because I've always joked the reason we send our kids to school is because if they were home with me all day, they would not be smart. The school of Trevor DeVage would not be good. School of Laura DeVage would be great. But I also think the social interaction piece, I love having my kids around kids that are far from God. But in this time, we're really relishing that time we have with our girls right now, because that's time we wouldn't get right now with the schedules that would be, because musicals and sports and all that kind of stuff, that's all come to a screeching halt. And even the things we typically would watch or do, that's been altered. So we watch movies together, we're reading, we're taking walks. The girls went for a walk together today. It was so nice out. And I was like, they just wanted to go walk through the neighborhood together. And I was like, yeah, great, go for it. And so I think it's shifted. Like, we love it. It's not stressful for us to be home with our kids.
How do you guys see, what is the biggest challenge for you right now in your families, and what is the biggest reward of having this time?
Biggest reward is time. That's the biggest reward. We get more time. There's just more intentional time. The biggest challenge for me right now, personally, and I don't know if it's for you guys as well, because I'm at the church more now because of this than even before. Like last week, we were in the building 7 days last week. I mean, literally every day of the week, we're trying to get content filmed that has to go out. We're doing food stuff. We're coming up here for random things that typically we wouldn't be here for. Even like this tonight. Like, we don't do this on a regular basis. At least right now we are. But I mean, again, I think the challenge, honestly, I'm having a harder time balancing being home and being at work now than before the virus.
That's what I was going to say. Just, it's always there, being on staff in general, being in leadership of a church staff is even more, brings on a whole different level of that balance. But it's always there. But I feel it differently right now because we're all trying to figure out.
There's more at stake.
Yeah, we're just all trying to figure out what's going on.
Now let's talk about in light of the thousands of families out there who does not have the job we do. Like, they're working for a secular, corporation, and they're home. And one of the things I heard today I thought was powerful is that proximity, which that's what these families are dealing with right now. Proximity really reveal how vulnerable we all are.
Sure.
So how do you address that? What would you say to a family that's like, okay, I thought this thing about spending time with my family would be a good thing, but it's going way too long, right? Because reality is, families are not used to that kind of time together. They're not used. And many families watching us right now, they're used to both parents go to work, kids in school. They see each other for a few hours at night, few hours in the morning, and that's the family relationship. And now they're looking at months of, or we're going to have to spend time together inside the house.
Yeah, the parents are really cramping the kids' styles.
Exactly.
They're getting in the way.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to add the question here as we talk about this. Gary sent a question that's very interesting. Have you seen your kids' family in a new light while in this quarantine? So, what are the things that people can discover through this time, through this moment? But in reality, how families should take advantage of this time that looks actually harder than they thought.
I think if you look at it, we've talked a lot about, you and I have talked a lot about this, Joey. I think of just different resets that are they're going to happen. Because the longer this thing goes on, the more impact that reset is going to have and what it is. But from a family perspective, I mean, look at it. I'd encourage everyone to look at it as a time to reset, to recalibrate, whatever term you want to use, to evaluate wherever you may have been. It doesn't matter anymore, because now is now. And tomorrow is tomorrow. So let's figure out where we're at right now and take advantage of those things and the relationships. And
okay, but in reality, eventually this is going to change back to the way it was before, right? So what is the balance? What we're looking at here, what we're after, what we're trying to do during this time that we can spend time together, that when we come back to the regular schedule, we can actually take advantage of it. Do you know what I mean? Like how that actually works for a family watching this right now.
I think some of the stuff is you figure out, Alan talked about this reset, is you figure out if you're spending more time together, almost relearning everything we tend to do while we're having trouble with this is we're so programmed out, we're so scheduled out. Is sometimes we get in these schedules, and you see it all the time with kids, is how many kids get burnt out of some activity at a certain point as they get older, because we think, well, since they've been doing this since they were 5, they always want to keep doing it. And maybe figuring out, okay, with your kids, what do your kids like to do? And being open to different things. And if you find that, okay, there's something that they like to do, I didn't realize this, is obviously when we get out of this, going back and doing that. I also think, though, with families, kind of what you're talking about, one of the things now, and I've talked with some people about this, is you have to approach things and you have to be able to be, a term we've used around here at the church is to be fluid. And I think in your families, you need to be fluid. That if you go into this and you think, well, this is how I've always done this stuff, this is how we operate when the kids are on Christmas break, guess what? We're probably not going back to school the rest of the year. And so have the ability, and I think sometimes as parents, we feel guilty if we don't do certain things for our kids. But if you're at home and you're working and you're trying to figure that balance, I think right now it's one of those things where, because people have used the term, we're at war with this virus, is you have to figure out, what do I need to do so my family is good, so I can continue to do work and get my stuff done, and also, so what's the best game plan for us to survive from now till whenever, because we don't know when the new norm is going to be. And that may mean certain things that you're just like, okay, I'm going to let my kids do this a little bit more, or I'm going to do this a little more. You got to find that balance, and almost a new balance, so your family life and everything can be as successful as possible.
Well, don't you think it's kind of like when you're dating, and at the end of the night, you can go back to your separate places, right? You can go back to your apartment or your home. And then you get married and you move into the same house together, and you're like, you start learning things that you're like, I didn't know you did that. And why are you gross? I didn't know you were gross that way. You always look really good. What happened? You know what I mean? And vice versa, both ways. And so now families coming back together, they're literally they're learning new things about each other they just didn't know. And they're learning the nuances and the idiosyncrasies that we can hide behind those by going to work. We can hide behind those by going to school. And so now, I think that a lot of people are like, man, I'm learning some things I don't like. Well, okay, they're learning things they don't like about you too. So remember that, but flip that around and go, like, what are the things we're learning about each other that we can embrace And what I think this is going to do is it's going to reset the family dynamic that instead of chasing all these things and all this stuff, I mean, think about how programmed families are right now. I mean, I know families that when certain seasons hit, they are gone every night of the week. Every weekend is completely full. Their kids are in select everything, this, that, playing on every team. They're spending thousands of dollars for their kids to travel to multiple states to play a sport, and their kids are 6. And you're just like, what are you chasing? And now none of that is there to chase. Like our girls, Alan and I's girls both play on the SOPGA here in Ohio and for golf, and they've canceled their first 2 tournaments. And part of me is like, man, I'm really bummed because I like going to that. But now I'm like, oh, my daughter and I can actually go to the golf course together and play golf. We can go for walks. We can talk. We can read books together. Whatever that is. And all of a sudden, it's just this refocusing of all of those things they're fine, but we've made those things the thing at the expense of our families. And I think what we're going to have to relearn, not just here, but globally and really nationally, is that the family unit is actually more powerful when we're not as programmed.
Well, let's get a little bit of reality check because we've got a great question from Rupert. He said, I heard from Richard Hamilton today from corporate chaplains that domestic violence calls are substantially on the rise.
Yes.
Centers are getting many calls daily. So what can the church say or do to impact this issue? What can we do? Like, because that was my point in this conversation is, I think families are realizing that picture perfect family that they put on social media, they put on Facebook, it's not really there fake right book? Now. It's a fake book. Yeah. I mean, it's not there. It's not happening.
Because it's not real.
I know. And so as a church, I think it's a great question. What are we supposed to do here?
Well, here's the thing. This is the other thing that something like this will do. This will expose all the things that are not healthy in your relationships. This will expose it. And so time together will exposes a lot of things. When you get 2 hours together a day, you might bicker. You get 8 hours together a day, 12 hours together a day, and bickering escalates. Like I just saw an article today that in China, divorce rates are going through the roof right now because of the quarantine. Like because they're so focused on they're getting ahead in life and work and ethic. Work ethic's fine, but at the expense of your family. And I think as the church, our response has got to be, we talk about this a lot around here, and you're going to laugh at this, but this is a place where it's okay to not be okay, but we got to figure out what does it look like to be okay. And we've got to help families. Like we got to stop living in what Alan just said, fake book and Instagram life. Like there has got to be a reality that sets in and go, stop living for whatever you think Pinterest says you should be or what Instagram says you should be. Like, who cares? Like, you have got to live in a reality that's real, not some fake thing that you're trying to attain to, because you're never going to get there. You got to attain to what God has called you to, and that standard is not what you're going to see on Instagram. It's what you're going to see in the Word of God.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I think with that too, with that question, there's twofold for the church. Is we're limited to some stuff we can do, but if you're in the church and you know that you're friends with people and I had a conversation with my brother, and they were saying the Air Force is like, they said these situations are going to be in the increase. If you know someone that they're in there, you need to have the courage and the boldness to address that person and just say, hey, I want to talk to you, or what's going on. I mean, and I know there's the social distancing, but take the initiative. And I think too, if in those family situations of knowing that stuff is because so many people's schedules are rocked, if you're out there and you're a struggle, the awareness of, okay, I'm at a place where, because a lot of times we think of it as just that it's physical, but they're saying there's a lot of verbal stuff, is have the initiative to talk to someone, to reach out to someone. For people in our church, make a call to someone else, and don't just say, okay, I'll figure this out. But if it's something you're wrestling with, and you need some help, get help. And if you're in the church and there's people that you can help or talk to, we have to have the boldness with people to initiate the conversations if we know that's there. Because my question would be, if there's people we know that we can help and we don't do it, then
that's on
what
us.
are we doing? It's on us.
Well, what I was going to add to that is, similarly, is that corporately, the church, we kind of have our hands tied a little bit when it comes to Rupert's question. And I don't know if he's a believer, if he's not, if he's in one of those relationships or not. But if you do know of people, I mean, there's an immense amount of information out on the internet, right? That you can help guide these couples and families to help get some information. We have a prayer line. Countless other churches have prayer lines that you can call in and talk to people from the staff side of things. But this is, I think, one of those new norms that we were talking about a little bit ago on whether or not the church was going back to wherever it was. It's a realization that the congregants, the people that make up the church, are really the church. And to have the boldness, to have the courage, to have the conversation to say, dude, you're out of bounds. I mean, if you've got a friend that's in that situation, whether it's couples, whether it's all kinds of different things, whether it's a needle, a pill, a website, a bottle, whatever that is, we've got to rise up and say, you're out of bounds, bro.
Well, that goes back to what the excuse is going to be made, well, social distancing. Remember, social distancing is not social isolation. And so distance may mean we got to stay 6 feet apart or more, but that doesn't mean that we have to stay in isolation. And so technology, like you think about 100 years ago when other plagues were hitting like this, they couldn't leave their houses and see anybody else. And you didn't know what was going on in anybody else's house because there was no way to tell anybody. Right now, we're afforded the best opportunity in history with this, that we can actually stake it. Like, this is where social media actually is redeeming.
We can actually use it for something
We
positive
can actually
and good.
socially be distant and still be socially engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've got to utilize these tools to help one another and reach out to one another and have conversations face to face on a screen now, but face to face.
You know, I have two boys, Ethan and Winston, 11-year-old, 13-year-old. They're watching. They're watching that. One of the questions came through YouTube, and Ethan actually texted me and said, "Hey, there's somebody in the YouTube chat room asking a question." I mean, they're watching.
I love that your kid's manning the YouTube
I know,
chat
right?
room, by the way. That's wonderful.
And here's the interesting thing. Our boys, we're home watching TV. They see the press conference. They see the president there talking about what's going on and giving the report, the numbers. And they ask the question, so what does it mean here? What is that? They see the numbers of thousands of people dying every day, and they ask the questions. So I want to ask you guys, and we answer honestly. Yeah, this is what's going on, and here, this is what we're dealing with. We're trying to be as honest as we can, as possible with our boys. My question to you guys: what is your game plan to communicate with the kids about what's going on? What's your game plan? And what would you recommend families to do? How you recommend families to deal with this communication?
I don't know how everybody else's family functions. We're very open in our house. So we talk very openly about all topics. And so since my kids were little, and my kids are really in tune with what's going on in the world. We don't shelter them from that. My kids, they probably watch more news than I do. If you want to know the truth, they're more aware. Like my youngest daughter, Natalie, I remember during the last election, she wanted to stay up and watch all the polls and all that. I was like, go to bed. What is wrong with you? And and at the time she was in like 6th grade or 5th grade. I'm like, go to bed. And she has real opinions about this stuff. And I'll be honest with you, my kids are not scared by this thing. They're not freaked out by it. They miss their friends right now, but they get it. We've just been very honest, like, here's what it means. Here's what this looks like. Here's what this could look like long term. And we do that with every topic, whether it's this virus or it's talking about sex or it's talking about boys or it's talking about sex and boys and all those things. Like, we have open, honest conversations about the things of this world. And I think that's part of the problem with family is we don't ever want to have the hard conversations with our kids, and then we can't figure out why our kids fall off the ledge because we've never had the conversation. So we're letting social media, we're letting the media, and we're letting their friends teach them these things that we as parents have abdicated instead of actually doing. And so I would rather be the one to give the messaging to my kids than let the world give it to them. So that's what we do in our house.
What do you guys think? Like, what do you tell the family watching right now? Like, how do we talk about this? How far should we go with the information with your kids?
We've raised our kids the same way. Both of our kids are adopted, and Tina and I decided early on that we were going to tell them as much information as we felt like they could process at the time. When they got old enough that we'd tell them, and we did, and it worked for us. So that's always kind of been our model. We talk pretty openly. My kids are old enough where now it's boyfriends and girlfriends and a whole new world that Dad's not very comfortable with. Yeah, especially on the boyfriend end. But
if you're watching right now,
we just have open conversations, and nothing's off limits, and there's no areas that we're not going to talk about, and speak wisdom into our kids. I do worry about the desensitivity, being desensitized, because my kids are 21 and 17, and they've never really had it hard. I think of the World War II generation, the greatest generation, and they know what difficult times are. This is a difficult time, and it's going to be relatively short, whatever that window is going to be. So I'm kind of convicted as a dad just to make sure that they're not too desensitized to whatever that death number is going to end up being, especially. It's going to be big. When you compare it to other things, you draw your own conclusion into that, but every one of those numbers is a person's life, is a family that's affected ongoing.
Okay, so it's kind of, we got a question here from that came in about the young children. I mean, what do you guys think? Like, where do you draw the line? And I got a question for you after that, but where do you draw the line?
Again,
like, how far you go with your honesty with kids that are very young?
You got to be able to assess what your kids are able to handle. I mean, I can't tell you how to parent your kid at what level your kid can handle honesty and truth. We've just always been transparent with our kids. So if there's something going down, I'd rather them have to swallow the hard pill of truth from me than have to figure out the hard truth from the world. And
are we still talking about the virus, or
yes.
just in general?
No, like Andrea just asked this question, and she put in here, I have a 6-year-old twins and an 8-year-old. They're concerned, but they don't get it.
Yeah, well,
so she's, how far should she go?
Well, I mean,
to tell, like, here's what's going on, kid.
I don't think you have to scare your children to death, but I think you need to give them the gravity of the situation. So, I mean, what Alan just said, there's real, like, if let's just say that number of 200,000 plus deaths happen in this country, that's a lot of death. That's a lot. And here's what that means is all of us are going to know somebody that has lost somebody to this virus. That's what it means. I've got 3 friends right now that are positive for the virus, tested positive. 2 of them in Canada, 1 in Illinois. And so there's a personal effect for me that I know people with this virus. Now, they're all doing well. They're all fine. They're probably going to get over this. They're going to recover. But we're all going to be, when this death toll, whatever it is going to be, it's like 9/11, right? When that happened, and this number will be way bigger than that. It already is. But I remember 9/11, I got married during that week. And the gravity of that, like being honest enough to help your kids understand. I think at ages 6 and 8, we'd have been that honest with our kids at that age of, here's the reality of this thing. We may not be affected this deeply by it, but there's going to be friends of yours and families that we know that are going to lose people that shouldn't have died because of a virus that we haven't been able to control.
Now, Brett, I wanted to bring this from a perspective in your personal life and your reality, right? So we know it's public. You're divorced. and now we have two sets of parents. I mean, the kids have to deal with this in two houses. Tell us a little bit about the dynamic there. What do you encourage families in this situation, blended families, dealing with this situation, because they may not all agree how to handle this. So, what do you tell them? Like how you encourage them in a situation like this, where like there's two different views on how to communicate this with kids?
I think you just got to you somehow have to find middle ground, and it requires from both sides of it. Is the last thing that you need to do in this situation as a parent is make it about you or what you want to do. So find a middle ground for it. I think one of the things with kids, and I would say with this, and I've talked with mine about, is that I can't think of the Ohio statistics off the top of my mind, but I know that there was statistics released at the end of March on New York. And in New York, I believe there was one person that was in between the ages of 0 to 17 that had passed from it, and they had an underlying condition with it. So I think part of this for our kids with this is just statistically that this disease, the virus, does not target. Kids are the least, is encourage them with that. Like when the statistics bear out and we see that, for them, is just tell them that. And then I think but going back to like a blended family, or when you have shared custody, is you just got to figure out for your kids what's best. And to me, you come up with you just come up with an agreement on what you're going to talk about and how that's going to look. And then I've always viewed it as you make the smartest decision for your kids. So right now with Monty, with Kyle and Ryan, they're with their mom and stepdad during the week. I'll get them tomorrow morning and they'll come back with me. But I think you need to be smart enough too with it, is if there's a point where for some reason it would make more sense during this time period to spend more time at their mom and stepdad's house, then they're going to spend more time at their mom and stepdad's house, and vice versa. So as we get through this, it's really, from a parenting perspective, I just think it's important for it to be less about us and more about our kids.
How do you think parents should talk to kids about fear?
I think with the kids, it's all right if you have that conversation. It's all right to, if they're afraid, if they have some fear, it's all right for them to be afraid. I think you have that conversation, but I think you also encourage them that you don't need to live in this. You don't need to live in this state of fear. And sometimes the easiest thing or the best thing to do in those situations is just try to, like, you have those conversations and then you just move on to more just of normal life and everything. And I think for kids today, it is different. Like I've told mine, I'm like, listen, boys, when we're going to the store, I was like, we ain't living in Mayberry anymore, man. You need to come into the real world a little bit. And the fantasy world that you live in here in Mason, it's altered. So some things are going to be different. You're going to need to make some adjustments, but you go back to it, and I just listen to what the smart people say in the government, and you tell them, wash your hands. Some people are going to disagree with that statement right there. Don't do weird things out in public.
We try the best we can to not get political, but he had to do this in the end.
Well, is that where the bear made the buckwheat?
I just trust even though she's a Buckeye, I trust Dr. Acton. So I think Governor DeWine, Dr. Acton have given us great information. So I think you practice some personal hygiene, that anything can happen, but I just encourage them with the positives. If that makes any sense.
I don't know about you guys. I really enjoyed this conversation, but we got to wrap things up. So this has been great, and we are so glad you joined us tonight for Let's Talk. We'll keep doing this, so watch for an announcement after Easter of our next Let's Talk live event. This weekend is Palm Sunday. Please join us at 9:50 on all of our CC Live channels to watch. We'll start with 15 minutes of children's programming from 10 to 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll be followed by programming geared toward our middle school and high school students from 10:15 to 10:30 a.m. And then we'll gather together for our usual worship experience at 10:30. And the next week at this time, Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll have another living room session, worship night. We had one last week and it was amazing. You don't want to miss the next one next week. It's going to be great. Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Most of all, church, know we love you and we miss you. This is tough. We know there's a lot of anxiety and confusion, fear and isolation right now. But remember, you're not alone. If you need someone to pray with you, we have a hotline number available. We put that on the screen in the chat room for you right now. We are in this together. Don't forget that. Thank you, guys.
Oh,
I
thank
think
you.
this was
Thank you.
great.
Thanks,
this was
Joe.
fun. We're going to do this again.
Let's do it. I'm in.
See you all later.
See you guys. Have a great night.
Take
Thanks
care,
for tuning
See
in.
you.
We all need community. Connection. One of the most unique elements of CC Live is that it is more than just a once-a-week worship experience. We are creating a global community of believers who meet together worldwide to be inspired, equipped, and encouraged with their faith. And the best part about it is you can do it anytime, anywhere. The purpose of online groups is building community while growing your Christian faith. Online groups watch video-based Bible teaching and discuss what they're learning from the comfort of their own homes. During the week between meetings, group members can dive deeper into the topic in preparation for the next meeting. It's simple, easy, and impactful. So grab a coffee, a Bible, and your device of choice, and let's get ready to learn more about God and His Word together. Looking for a group? Head to the CC Live Facebook page now to find the one that's right for you.